Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everybody. We've talked about this before. Now we're going to go a few layers deeper in terms of how your childhood pilots you now as an adult. And we're going to look at it through different lenses, including a parent now piloted by the way they grew up as well. She's got a lot of insight on this. She and her team of dozens dispense mental health support so many times for people, not just in Massachusetts where they're located, but in many areas of the country. And actually, it spans around the world, to be quite honest with you, with some of their support efforts. From New Beginnings in Massachusetts, she's our Diamond of the Decade. Sherri and Alexandrovich is back with us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. How about yourself?
Good. Focus on learning more about this childhood parental trauma. How do you define that?
Well, so there's multitude of different definitions that go with that. But so the trauma piece of it is comprised of emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse. There's so many different layers when we're talking about childhood trauma. And when we grow up, and we become an adult ourselves, or we become a parent ourselves, sometimes the way in which we've been treated or conditioned as a child seeps into who we have become as an adult. And so the child who was never listened to, was never validated, was always dismissed, will sometimes grow up to be an oversharer, somebody who tends to give more information that's necessary. And the reason that they're doing that is either as a way of not getting into trouble because they've been conditioned as a child that they're not good enough, or the things that they're saying or doing are wrong. And they're always used to justifying or defending themselves, that as they grow up into adulthood, they tend to be that adult who overshares or is always defending, or instead of saying, the question is, can you babysit my cat for the weekend? Your response is not just, no, I'm sorry, I'm busy. It's, well, I can't because I have to do, I've got laundry to do. I've got to go to the doctor's appointment. You give all of these reasons to justify, because just saying no doesn't feel good for you.
Well, we've talked about that before in terms of your boundaries and things like that, where no is a complete sentence. You don't have to go into this long litany of reasons why. It's just, no, I'd love to, but I can't. I think most of us do that. And I wonder if it comes from childhood. But then you also have those of us, myself included, and I've recognized this a while back and I fixed it, or working on it, the people pleaser.
And I can relate to that as well. I definitely have grown up coming from my background, where there was an enormous amount of a variety of different abuses, not just in childhood, but also into adulthood in previous relationships that I've been in. And then you become conditioned in a specific way where you always feel like you're on edge, or you always feel like you have to be that people pleaser, or always the person who is going to organize or to, put yourself out there for somebody, and also oversharing. Because you feel bad, you feel guilty, you have this sense inside where you're like, oh, it's really hard. And I know, I even still struggle with that. I have a hard time saying no. And I work really hard on setting boundaries with people, but sometimes it's really hard to just say, no, I'm sorry, I can't. You just have that feeling, right? You're shaking it, right? That feeling of unsettledness where you're like, oh, I have to give a reason why, but you really don't. You don't have to give a reason why. Not being able to is reason enough.
It's uncomfortable.
Oh, for sure. It definitely can be uncomfortable. And, I think that when you've been conditioned and grown up experiencing, not feeling good enough or not feeling worthy for things, when we become adults, we either shut down, we don't share, we self-sabotage, because we're waiting for that other shoe to drop, or we're waiting for that rejection because that's what we've grown up experiencing. Or the other side of the coin is we become, the person who's just always out there and talking and oversharing and being that caretaker and being that nurturer. So you've kind of got, there's that two sides of the coin when you have experienced such enormous in longevity of abuse. And I think that it's difficult because we live in a society right now where there's a lot of sensitivity. There seems to be a lot of sensitive adults, a lot of sensitive children. And how do we navigate that when we as adults are grown up and have been conditioned a specific way, and then we in turn have children who are sensitive children who require a different way of parenting than what we have been exposed to? So that becomes another layer of challenging, because as much as we have worked through our own trauma, we're now experiencing our children's trauma or somebody else's children's trauma. And how do we treat that, not just therapeutically in an office setting, but also in a community setting, in a personal setting, as an adult, as a parent, as a grandparent? And what are the expectations that's put on us, to be able to kind of move around in all of those different compartments? And I think some of the parents that have grown up with that old school philosophy of suck it up, boys don't cry, you have to just handle it. And then they grow up and they become part of somebody else's children or their own children, and they have that philosophy. That's emotional abuse. If you have a child that's coming to you and they need help or they need support or they're crying or they need something additional, and your response to them is suck it up, or with the sarcastic question of, are you crying right now? Those are considered emotional abuse. And those are things that are very, very impactful to not just other adults, but it's specifically to children. And I think that's an important awareness that people need to be in tune with.
Not throwing any parents under the bus, but they were piloting by what they were taught, and on and on and on. I remember I was bullied. I was the big kid. Now I got picked for dodgeball, all of that stuff. And I wasn't super close with my dad. I'd see him from time to time. And his solution was he got me a punching bag.
Yeah.
So, and as life later in life, and that's, okay, learn how to defend yourself. Okay. Later in life, I took a strength assessment test, and it revealed that my number two strength, number one is communication. Okay. Got that. Number two was empathy. So I was feeling a certain way, but nobody really knew that back then. And I'm not one, to start a fight. I don't need to,
Right.
A gentleman will walk, but never run. It's like, I don't need to, you fix it, or you just, you do your thing. I do my thing. But nobody knows how their kid is wired at that time. So it's really tough to really figure that out as a parent.
Right. And I think that society really plays a big impact generationally, where we've all been raised, how we've been raised. And I think that times definitely in 2026, we're in a whole different climate right now, where we do have more in tune, sensitive kiddos, as well as living in a society where we support therapy, where I think 20, 30 years ago, it wasn't as acceptable or talked about as it is now. So I think that we have definitely made strides in that area. However, I think that our kids are just so multifaceted. They just are so eclectic in how they respond to things. You've got one group of kids who are just the bullies. You've got one group of kids who are just really sensitive, one group of kids who can really express themselves, one group of kids who don't. And then you throw them all in this melting pot, and then they have a variety of different influences that are with them. And it's interesting because you can hear the different parent responses. So I'm just going to leave names out of it, but so a 11-year-old came to me with a story this week, and they've been being bullied at school. And he was talking to another adult, where this other adult's response was, oh, I'll just go have a conversation with his father. So there was that mindset, right? Then another response to that could be, well, let's talk about how you can handle this differently. And then another response could be, well, maybe you should defend yourself. So I think that how do kids navigate that when they're getting feedback from so many different people in so many different areas? And then when they just feel inside, internally, they feel sad, or they just need to have a moment where, their sensitivity is validated and appreciated, because that skill is going to carry with them throughout their whole childhood into becoming an adult. And what they do with that today is going to impact who they become in 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have had that sensitive side of them squashed. And so then they're going to become adults who don't talk about their emotions or continue to be shut down, or they're going to be the oversharers who their needs weren't met as a child. So now they're going to go out, grow up, and try to get their needs met in so many different ways that could potentially be unhealthy.
Yes, engaging in relationships that don't support because they think that they can get their needs met there, but up against brick wall, but trying to chip away at that. And a lot of this, is this what we would consider generational trauma?
I think that it definitely could fit into that category for sure. Yes, absolutely. Because generationally, where do we learn how to parent? We learn it from how we've been treated or what we've observed. So whether it's our own generation or whether it is kind of generational through other experiences, because everybody's learned it from somewhere. So it would qualify in the generational realm for sure, and then what do we do with that? I just, one of the things that I say to my grandson, who I've adopted all the time, is when you grow up, I want you to take all of the things that didn't feel good for you, or all of the things that you wished were different with your own biological parents or people who have served as role models, parental role models in your life, and do it differently. You get to make those choices. That's the one thing that I would really want. If anybody's listening today, is just empowering our kids the power of choice, because you get to decide today. And if we can have those conversations with our kids today about what does it look like when we become an adult, or what does it look like when we become a teenager, or what are our choices look like when we're in this situation, and help to empower them to know that they don't have to respond that way. They don't have to do what has been done to them, which we know why that happens, because we know that adults who have been traumatized in any way, they do a couple of different ways. They re-victimize as a way of having control, as a way of understanding what they're going through, or they become the complete opposite, or they find a middle ground. I mean, there's a variety of different ways that can play out as an adult. And helping to teach our children now that it's okay to have choices and think of things differently. We don't have to follow patterns. We get to break free and be whoever we want to be. We get to be the best versions of ourselves, and only we get to decide what that looks like.
Would you say, and I don't mean this in a negative way at all, everything's a learning experience. Would you say that if you're a parent,
Mm-hmm.
to look back at your parents and identify the things now that you see that maybe that really wasn't the best to support me? And again, they're just parenting from what they learned, and on and on. And, write them down, be mindful of it, and then take a look at what you're doing and maybe change that for the better.
I love that. I think that's a great exercise. I'm going to steal that.
Because I'm thinking about this now.
Yeah.
And I believe in many regards, I did it not slightly intentionally, but not so much. But it was more of the working on myself,
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of these came to light. Like my mom was very overprotective. So for a long period of time, I was like that way with my kids until I just realized, oh, wow, fall off your bike if you want.
Right.
You're gonna be around here instead of helicopter parenting. So I kind of ease back on that, and take some things from my father, the fun stuff, I retain that, but maybe some of the other things not so much. But a blend of the good. They take the good things that made you feel good, and then the other things, and they kind of make the blend there. But be, I guess, intentionally aware of those things.
Yes. And
Mm,
I think that as adults, we should always be intentionally aware. Because if we live our life with intentionality and we're always making sure that we are mindful of how we say things, because it's not the what, it's the how. What is it that we're looking to get out of whatever it is that we're intending to say? So sometimes it's self-serving, and sometimes it's informational, and sometimes it should be things that should be kept to ourselves. And
mm,
so being mindful before we say it of how are we going to say it, and what is the anticipated outcome of that. So I think that that kind of goes in alignment with what you're saying, because as adults, we live in a different world than how we were parented, and whatever our parental experiences are, a portion of them apply today, but not all of them do, because we just live in a very different society than how, I mean, even for myself at 55, how I was parented, 50 years ago. And I mean, that generationally, there's a huge gap in what that looks like. And so I think one of the challenges that parents have is how do we adapt our parenting and our discipline in today's society? I know for myself, so my grandson's 11. I've had him since he's been born, and my kids are 34 and 36. So there's a 20-something year difference in parenting and what that looks like as to how I would have parented 25 years ago versus parenting today. It's just a whole different world. And you always have to have that flexibility and that adaptability to be able to be mindful. I think if I could express anything, it's just be mindful of the person and who they are that you're dealing with.
mm.
Does that make sense?
It really does. And if you look back, you scan your mind to some of the things maybe you said and did,
Mm-hmm.
and do a few of those come to your mind, and then you say, yeah, I probably should have not said that or did that a little bit differently.
Absolutely.
Same.
I have reflected upon, you know, how I parented 20 something years ago and the reasons that I made certain choices that I made.
Hmm.
And, you know, do I wish that I had done some things differently? Absolutely. Yes. I mean, we can't live in the woulda, coulda, shoulda, have, but what we can do, and I don't suggest that people kind of perseverate and stay stuck in that and all of that guilt, but to take that knowledge and move forward with it, because there's our growth. And that's how we move forward and we evolve and we become a better person, is we don't pretend that we didn't make the mistakes, but we take the mistakes and we talk about them and we process them and we figure out why did we make those mistakes, and then how can we do things differently moving forward. And that's what kind of effectuates the change in order to be a better person. But it's having that mindfulness, that willingness, that awareness to say, wow, that probably wasn't a good choice, and actually really let it resonate, internalize, and genuinely make that change, not just the lip service. Because there are people out there who, apologies, I'm sorry is just a blanket statement. They just say it. They don't really have any meaning behind it. It's just the words. And, I'll say that to my grandson all the time. There'll be a repeat behavior, whatever it might be. And he'll say, I'm sorry. And I'll say, you know what, bud? You were sorry the first time. Second time it was a choice. Third time, there's going to have to be a consequence. I'm sorry.
Mm,
And just doesn't cut it. I've told you 3 times that I'm going to give you a 10-minute warning before dinner so that you can stop your video games. Coming up, well, my dinner's getting cold with the blanket, I'm sorry, that doesn't work anymore. Now there has to be a consequence. So, teaching kids that the power of words and I'm sorry isn't just something that we throw out there just to get out of being in trouble.
for sure. I mean, well, what if we've taught them to be apologetic? But
Right.
you can't always use that as the excuse. I mean, I can even think back now as we're talking, probably 8 years ago, I was working with my son in the backyard. We were working on something on the back of a shed, and I snapped. Like he did something, accident, whatever. And I was like, and I think back, I'm like, why'd I do that? I
Mhm.
know I was working too much, tired, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Um, I could never do that now. I mean, he's 19 now. Um, my daughter's younger, but all of that, like when you just kind of reframe it,
Mhm.
um, but
But you know what?
that's our evolution too.
Absolutely. And that's also part of life. And what an amazing learning opportunity to actually teach our children by sitting down and saying, I'm sorry that I lost my temper. This is
Mm.
how I have done it. Because what we're teaching our kids is that everybody makes mistakes and that's okay. And this is what we can do to make them better.
And accountability.
And accountability. Absolutely. Yes.
Mm.
I cannot tell you, I mean, the amount of times I'll say to Christopher, I'll say, I'm sorry that I was short this morning. And it doesn't really matter why I did it, right? It's just, I'm sorry that I was short this morning. I'm going to try harder. Giving an excuse is really just, that's for me. That's not for him. He doesn't care why I was short with him this morning. He cares that I was short with him. He cares that my tone fluctuated and that was upsetting for him and that I apologized. I took accountability and I told him that I'll make an effort to not do that again. That's more meaningful than the why.
Mm.
Why I did it doesn't really matter, right? There could be a million reasons why. I could have been tired, stretched. He was taking too long. I was taking too long, whatever the reasons are. It's really just about, like you said, that accountability piece is so important.
Is it okay to include the reason as long as it's a legit reason? And the reason that I'm bringing that up is so they understand where your head was at that time. Maybe you were working three jobs. Maybe you went through medical treatments, whatever it might be. So that at least there's a reference, but there's 1000% accountability when you bring it up.
Yeah, I would do it in different sentences, though. I'm sorry that I snapped at you this morning, period.
Mm.
I will
Mhm.
try
Mm.
harder to not do that again, period. I was feeling a little stretched thin because I didn't sleep last night. I have a really bad migraine. I'm not feeling great this morning. So the three different sentences, one does not
Mm.
negate the other. So it's, I'm sorry, period. I should not have snapped at you, period. I
Love
will
that.
try harder when I'm tired or exhausted
Mm.
or not feeling well, period. And that way there, what we want to teach our children that situations come up that alter our responses and things, and that's okay. But we also need to be mindful of how we present them. We also have to be mindful because the power of words, you cannot take back something that you said.
Nope.
You cannot do it. And emotional and verbal abuse has such long lasting impacts on everybody. The bruises heal, the situation comes and goes, but it's what you've internalized inside of your heart, inside of your soul, inside of your head. Those are the impacting things that carry forward with us and really mess with us as we're adults. And what does that look like? And how do we enter into new relationships? How do we set good boundaries with new relationships? How do we understand that we are enough and that we deserve to be treated that way? Those are important lessons that I don't know that a lot of kids are getting right now because parents are stretched thin, parents are working too many jobs. They're not getting the time that they need to feel important. Doesn't have to be a lot of time. There isn't anybody that knows as much as I do when it comes to how stretched you are as a parent. Believe me, I mean, I was 26. I had four kids. I had my niece and my nephew, my two kids, single mom, bartending nights, going to school. I had kids from the ages of 4 to 11. And I mean, the
Mm.
stretched thin is a understatement. So I get what that is like to always be so stretched thin. But you just want to always just you just do the best that you can and have those conversations.
Mm. I love what you said about putting the period in between each thing you say, because you
Mhm.
never want it coming off as
An excuse.
thank you. But you also want them to be aware, your kids to be aware that it wasn't them. There was a reason
Mhm.
for it. Doesn't make it right, but this is what was going on, or this is what I was dealing with at that time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
For sure. So I love the periods and I love the word and
Yes,
because
there are no buts.
Right, absolutely, because and gives us the flexibility to hold two things at the same time, period, stops the sentence, validates the feeling, gives you a redirection, and helps that other person, regardless whether it's a child, a spouse, a friend, it doesn't matter, helps that person to feel important. I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings, period. I will try harder, period. I didn't know that was a sensitive topic for you. I will be mindful in the future.
Even saying, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings this morning, period.
Mm-hmm.
As you just said that, I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
whoa. It stands alone. And in just a few words does so much.
Yes, because sometimes it's hard for us to receive that. It's hard for us to hear that we've hurt someone's feelings. And so we get defensive. So our first response is, well, no, I didn't, or that's not what I said, or I didn't mean to say it that way. But those are all defensive words. None of those are validating. So if somebody says to you, you hurt my feelings, your immediate response should be to that, I'm sorry, I did not intend to hurt your feelings. I mean, period. That's it. End of story. It doesn't matter whether you feel like you did or you didn't. That other person has that emotion. Their feelings are true. They're genuine. They're important. And then you can go on to say, I will do this differently, or this was my intention. And then you can go on to kind of give more information. But it's really important that your first response is, I'm sorry that that's how you felt, or I'm sorry if I made you feel that way, or I'm sorry, period.
Mm-hmm.
Because if that person is giving you the opportunity to make things right, then you should take that, because that's a rare opportunity, because what they could have done with that is shut down and then not ever given you that opportunity. And then you don't know what's going on, but now internally they don't trust you.
Mm.
When somebody gives you that like really important nugget, you should take it and you should do wonderful things with it, because not everybody's going to trust you to give you that. And
Love it.
What a gift. It's a gift.
My opinion, this is such a great conversation today, and so important for parents and just in general. In general, if you have to apologize to somebody, New Beginnings, WC.com is your website. You're there to help people move their lives forward, find transformation, walk that journey. You're based in Massachusetts, but you help people everywhere. Sherri Ann, thank you for today. Great conversation.
All right. Sounds good. We'll see you next week.
You got it. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hi, this is Terry Crews, actor, former football player, game show host, father of 5, and all-around big dude. I'm also an expert on drama. I know all kinds of drama. There's the good kind that comes with having a house full of kids. There's the bad kind, like season-ending injuries. There's the necessary kind, like having an agent in Hollywood. And there's silly drama, like the drama around my percolating pectorals. And then there's the drama you can skip.
Skip the drama that comes with not having your high school diploma or equivalency. Find free adult education classes near you and finish your high school diploma. Visit finishyourdiploma.org.
Or text diploma to 97779. Message and data rates may apply. Reply STOP to opt out. That's diploma to 97779. And leave the drama to actors like me.
Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.